Where's everyone going? Bingo?
My journey with Resident Evil 4 began when I was just a kid, and it was one of the first games I ever played. The gripping narrative, combined with the heart-pounding gameplay, instantly made it my favorite. I remember the thrill of navigating through the eerie village, every creak of the floorboards and distant animal howl sending shivers down my spine. Battling the terrifying Ganados with their relentless pursuit and unsettling chance was both terrifying and exhilarating. Since then, I've played countless games, many of them excellent, but none have quite reached the same level of impact for me. While Resident Evil 7 and the RE2 remake were fantastic in their own right, capturing different facets of the survival horror genre, they didn't capture my heart in the same way that RE4 did. When I heard about Resident Evil 4 remake being announced, I was filled with a potent mix of excitement and anxiety. Would they honor the legacy of the original, preserving the elements that made it so special? Or would they stray too far, losing the essence of what made it a masterpiece? The moment I dove into the Resident Evil 4 remake, it felt both familiar and refreshingly new. The iconic village fight, which I remembered so vividly from the original, was back. It was just as intense as I remembered, but now even more terrifying with enhanced graphics and sound design that ramped up the tension to an almost unbearable degree. One moment I was carefully navigating the dilapidated houses, desperately searching for supplies, and the next, I was frantically battling hordes of Ganados, the sounds of their chainsaws and guttural cries sending chills down my spine.
Gloria a las plagas! Gloria a las plagas!
The level of detail in the environment was astounding, from the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows to the subtle rustling of leaves in the wind. This wasn't just a graphical update, it was a completely reimagined experience. It's incredibly satisfying, a roller coaster crashing through a haunted house. For me, the way they nailed the atmosphere immediately told me this remake gets it. The tension is heightened throughout, a brilliant revision of a beloved game that ticks all the boxes. The combat feels more fluid and engaging, thanks to the revamped movement and parry mechanics, making each encounter a strategic and desperate fight for survival. And even the most familiar of locations are presented with this constant state of unease, which made the game great. All right, let's talk gameplay. This is where the Resident Evil 4 remake really shines. Leon feels way more fluid and responsive. I mean, in the original, he could feel a little clunky at times, right? Like he was moving around in a tank. But now, he's agile, he's quick, he can actually move while aiming, which is a huge game changer. It lets you be so much more strategic in combat. The modernized controls also help a lot with that, giving you so much more control over Leon's movements. And then there's the parrying.
Our own government!
Oh man, the parrying is genius. It's not just about dodging and running away anymore. You can actually meet those Ganados head-on, time it right, and deflect their attacks. That opens them up for a counterattack or a melee finisher, which is incredibly satisfying. It adds a whole new layer of depth and skill to the combat. You really have to pay attention to enemy attack patterns and time your parries perfectly to pull it off. The enemies aren't just mindless zombies anymore either. They're smarter, more aggressive, and they react to your actions in more realistic ways. That makes every fight feel way more intense and unpredictable. You can't just run in guns blazing. You have to be smart, use cover, and exploit their weaknesses to survive. Honestly, I feel like the whole combat loop is just more satisfying in the remake. Targeting enemy weak points feels more impactful, and executing those stylish takedowns is so rewarding. It's like you're actually a skilled survival horror badass. The original RE4 was already an amazing game, no doubt about it. But this remake just makes it feel totally modern and relevant for today's gamers. They didn't mess with what worked. They just refined it, polished it, and made it even better than it was before. Seriously, they cranked up the horror elements to 11 in this remake. Everything's darker, grittier, and more unsettling. The improved lighting is a game changer, creating these incredible shadows and highlighting the creepy details of the environments. Remember the village from the original game? It was already pretty scary, but in the remake, it's terrifying. The way the light filters through the trees, the creaking of the buildings, the distant sounds of the Ganados, it all creates this oppressive atmosphere that keeps you on edge the entire time. And the castle and the island? They're even more menacing than I remember. Even areas I knew by heart from the original had me on edge. constantly expecting something to jump out at me. The developers really did an amazing job of revitalizing those familiar locations with new details and atmospheric touches. You can almost smell the musty air and feel the dampness of the stone walls. The sound design is also incredible, playing a huge role in creating that heightened sense of dread. Every creak, every distant growl, every unsettling whisper, it all contributes to an environment that's thick with tension and suspense. I was so immersed in the game that I honestly felt like I was really there, fighting for my survival. The Resident Evil 4 remake expands combat with deeper mechanics and more tactical options. Stealth plays a larger role, with crouching and knife takedowns allowing players to thin enemy groups before engaging. While the AI remains aggressive, making prolonged stealth difficult, it provides a useful way to conserve resources. Weapons feel more powerful and varied, with fan favorites like the Red 9, Striker, and Killer 7 returning with improved handling. Shotguns hit harder, the Riot Gun offers precision, and the Striker excels at stopping power. A standout addition is the Bolt Thrower, a silent crossbow-style weapon with retrievable ammo, perfect for resource conservation. With attachable explosive mines, it doubles as a trap-based weapon, adding a tactical layer to combat. The game's resource management is more flexible, with gunpowder mixing allowing players to craft ammo types based on found materials. The merchant is more integral, offering new upgrades, trade options, and recipes to customize playstyles. Knife durability also plays a key role, requiring careful upgrades to ensure reliable takedowns. Side quests expand the experience, offering rewards for completing varied challenges. Tasks range from hunting down rats in infested areas to taking on powerful foes like the Iron Maiden, providing a reason to explore beyond the main objectives. These quests not only grant spinels for high-value items, but also deepen the world building, making each visit to the merchant more rewarding. Boss fights feel more dynamic, with Salazar now a fast-moving, unpredictable opponent who attacks relentlessly. His reworked fight forces players to stay mobile and react quickly, making it far more engaging than the original. Meanwhile, Ashley's solo segment is now a tense, atmospheric puzzle sequence. Without weapons, players must rely on hiding and environmental interactions, with lighting and sound design heightening the suspense. By refining combat, weapons, and resource management while reworking key encounters and expanding side content, the remake makes every decision feel more impactful, balancing action and survival horror in a way that feels fresh yet familiar.
Then come, Sancho Panza. Let us rescue the Princess Dulcinea.
You're gonna hurt yourself.
Hey, that was my lance.
Okay, let's talk about the characters. They're not just the same cardboard cutouts they were in the original game. They've actually been given depth, personality, and believable motivations. Ashley, for example, is no longer just a tag-along liability that you have to constantly babysit. Thank goodness. They gave her better AI, so she's actually helpful. And the best part? No more health bar to worry about. Now, she can get incapacitated and you can revive her, but you don't have to constantly stress about her taking damage. Luis is also way more developed as a character. He's not just a plot device anymore. He actually has a personality, a sense of humor, and a backstory that makes him more relatable. His interactions with Leon are genuinely funny and engaging. And then there's Krauser. In the original game, he was kind of a one-dimensional villain, but in the remake, his backstory is way more fleshed out, giving you a better understanding of his motivations and why he does what he does. Seriously, it's small changes like these that have a huge impact on the overall experience. The characters actually feel more human, more relatable, and that makes the story way more engaging and emotionally resonant. You actually care about what happens to them, which makes the stakes feel even higher. Let's talk about those iconic moments that made the original RE4 so damn memorable. The Chainsaw Ganado fight, the lake monster, Krauser's battle, they're all back. And they're all improved in some way, like the Chainsaw Ganado is even more terrifying now, if you can believe it.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
That chainsaw revving up still makes my heart skip a beat. And Krauser's knife fight? Oh man, that was a quick-time event fest in the original, but now it's fully interactive. You're actually dodging, parrying, and stabbing in real time, making it way more intense. The transitions between the areas in the village, island, and castle all transition into each other naturally. Honestly, every major moment feels just as good as I remember, if not better. They managed to capture the essence of those scenes while also adding new twists and surprises that kept me on the edge of my seat. But there are a few things missing from the remake that I kind of miss. But honestly, they don't detract too much from the overall experience.
Been expecting you, my brethren.
No thanks, bro.
Yeah, the U3 boss fight is completely gone, and Mercenaries mode wasn't available at launch, though thankfully they added it later as a free update. Also, Separate Ways was released as paid DLC, which is a bummer since it was originally included in the PS2 version of RE4. Some of Leon's campy one-liners were removed or toned down, which is a bit of a shame because they were part of the original's charm. And the Ganados do feel more aggressive overall, which works in some ways, but sometimes they feel a little less unpredictable. Also, I noticed that the remake definitely leans more into the horror aspect than the original, which had a lot of action-heavy moments. Some may like that, but it is a change from the original tone. But even with a few things missing, the game still delivers in a huge way. The core experience is so strong that those minor omissions hardly matter in the grand scheme of things. It's an exceptional return to one of the greats. And like the other Resident Evil remakes, this one feels completely new and uses the original as a baseline. It subverts expectations by making some parts of the game fresh, like in the wolf scene when the player comes across it. We've talked about the balance, the improvements, the respect for the original, but what truly elevates this remake above the rest? It's the sense that the developers understood the why behind everything that made RE4 great, not just the what. It's not enough to just recreate the same scenes, the same enemies, the same story beats. You have to understand why those elements resonated with players in the first place. And Capcom clearly did. They understood that Resident Evil 4 wasn't just a horror game, it was a masterclass in tension, atmosphere, and satisfying combat. It was a game that constantly kept you on the edge of your seat, never letting you feel truly safe or comfortable. The remake takes all of those core elements and amplifies them, creating an experience that's even more intense, more immersive, and more rewarding than the original. It's not just a nostalgia trip, it's a reimagining that feels fresh, modern, and utterly captivating. Look, I've gushed enough about this game, but I can't overstate how much of an impact the Resident Evil 4 remake had on me. This remake took the core elements of the original and revamped it, making it a brand new experience. I think this remake is far better than the original. It's not just a game that I enjoyed playing, it's a game that I'll remember for years to come. It has all the heart of the original and made it more complete. It's a must-play. Seriously, if you haven't experienced it yet, trust me. Subscribe now to be the first to catch my next video, because there's always another adventure waiting around the corner. Until next time, happy gaming.